Hey, thanks for joining me for another edition of The Gift of Gab. So, a little while back in one of my previous videos, you guys got to meet Raven, the studio kitty. Well, there's one more kitty that hangs around with me. Now, he's not the studio kitty exactly. His name is Dexter, the serial killer kitty. He's my buddy, and I love him to pieces, and he does tricks. And today, what we're going to talk about is a handful of tricks that you can use in your auditioning techniques. Kind of an extension of some of the things we've talked about with auditions previously. For every trick I show you, Dexter's going to do a trick in kind. Let's get started. Trick number one. Let's talk about your slates. Most of you probably know by now to keep your slates short, keep them clean, really just your name, not a whole lot else. Maybe you're representing agent, something like that, but get in, get out fast as you can and get into the performance. But there's two really important things you want to know about your slate. The first is slate in character. If you're performing a character read or any performance that's even slightly different than your natural speaking voice, make sure you slate in that character, because any difference between the slate and the start of take one is going to kind of throw your audience off. It's going to jar them a little bit, and casting directors and producers really like to know that you're in the moment and you know how to stay there. Another great tip with your slates is to make certain that if you're doing multiple takes, you let them know ahead of time that you take an extra second just to say a couple of takes to follow. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It kind of gives them an indicator that if they didn't hear exactly what they were looking for immediately, they should maybe skip ahead a little bit, and they will. Now here's Dexter giving a high five. Good job, Dex. Okay, tip number two. Make sure that when you are auditioning, you're providing multiple takes, especially if the read is short. I can't stress the importance of this enough. Some voice actors do it pretty consistently, others don't. I do it with pretty much every single audition I send out, and it's specifically for one reason. Most casting people like to know that you're not a one-trick pony. They like to know that you can offer more than one thing and that you can provide different performances. I have literally booked voiceover jobs simply because a producer or casting director listened to my audition and said, you know, you provided us with a great number of options very, very quickly, and we didn't hear the exact option we wanted, but you provided us with so many that we knew we could direct you into the read we were looking for. It's an important process. Now, it's not to say that you want to make a hugely long audition, and you certainly don't want to read a 60-second spot 2, 3, 4, 5 times back to back to back. But you at least want to give them segment performances, at least a couple of paragraphs back to back that show some variety. Don't supply a multi-take audition if the reads are identical. If they are, that's not going to help you at all. But if you can successfully make sure that you're providing wildly different juxtaposed performances, it can definitely increase your odds of booking. Now check out Dexter Man as he shows off again. Tip number 3. It's similar to tip number 2, but it is different. ABC reads. ABCs, or line reads, are something that happen all the time inside of voiceover sessions. It's when a producer or a director asks you to take a particular line, a particular phrase, and give it to them 2 or 3 different ways, back to back to back to back. Now, it's really, really helpful, again, so that they can get different performances from you, different little nuances to the read, rapid fire. It's a great thing to show inside of an audition. Now, unlike multiple takes, all we're doing with an ABC is isolating a line or a phrase that has a lot of possibility. We've all seen that. You read a script and you look at a line and you just go, man, there's a lot of different ways that I could do that one thing. Do it. Right then and there, midway through the audition, you take that one line and B, C. Perform it, perform it, perform it, then move on to that next line. It's just another little trick. It shows, again, casters, producers, the people in the decision-making chair, that you get what you're doing, you know how a session works, you know how to work well with the producers, and that you can provide alternate styles. I always like to look at it this way. You're proving to them that you're what's called a thinking, working actor. You're not just someone who walks into the booth, does it one way, and that's it. You're someone who's saying, look, I've read into your script, I've analyzed it, I know there's more than one way for this to be done. So here are your choices. Speaking of choices, here's Dexter with another trick. Tip number 4. Don't over-edit your auditions. It's a really common problem. A lot of voice actors, especially when they're just kind of starting out, they're getting the hang of editing, they tend to overproduce the final product of an audition. They tend to remove too many breaths, get rid of too many gaps. They tend to try to over-control the process. There's an irony to that. Somewhere in the chain of command that is the voiceover you're performing, there is an audio producer. Don't take their job away from them. Let them do it. They're going to probably receive a raw copy of your audition as part of the casting process, and also maybe for either a spec ad or some kind of a scratch track that they might be putting together. If you over edit, you're limiting the producer's ability to control and work with that voiceover. It's not really worth it. Also, you run the risk of clipping things, you run the risk of the audio sounding very choppy, you run the risk that it just doesn't sound natural anymore. Keep it loose. There's really no reason to over edit. Get rid of your obvious mistakes, get rid of pickups, but other than that, you can keep it kind of loose. It's perfectly okay. So, to wrap this up, here is Dexter's absolute favorite trick of mine. He does this to everyone. Hopefully one of these days, if you get to come visit my studio, you'll meet him in person. Maybe you'll get to headbutt with him. Headbutt? Yeah. So there you go. 4 tricks for auditioning for voiceovers, 4 tricks from the crazy cat. Gotta love it. Thank you for joining us. So glad that you could. You'll see more from my studio kitties in the future. More can be found at GabrielleNistico.com, also in my books. Take care till next time.